All right, well, with our AI picture here, let me just show you something. These are not verses, these are chapters. So just to give you a quick breakdown, easy breakdown about the book of 1 Samuel. And if there's a first, that means there's a second also. So 1 and 2 Samuel, but we're starting with 1 Samuel. Just to give you an idea, chapters 1 to 7 will be focused on Samuel. We'll see his birth today. So his introduction. Chapters 8 to 15, we will focus on Saul. That's King Saul, the first king of Israel. And then we will finish off with chapter 16. We will be introduced to David. That's King David, and that will take us through the end of the chapter. And that will actually take us on into 2 Samuel later on, but that's a long ways from now. But these are just chapter breaks. And what you do need to know is each of these individuals, these are our main characters. We will meet other characters along the way. And but these three are the main characters. And not only will all of the characters that we read in 1 Samuel intersect with these guys, but these guys also will intersect and overlap with one another. So meaning we're going to learn about Samuel from chapter 1 to 7. Well, when we're introduced to Saul in chapter 8, that doesn't cancel Samuel out. He's still there. He's still prophesying. He's still doing his best to leave. And when we meet David, he's going to intersect or overlap with those guys also. So we won't just see a clean break where, okay, Samuel's done and now let's move on to Saul. Okay, Saul's done, let's move on to David. Each of them will intersect with one another. And there are some fantastic stories. I don't know how many of you have studied through the book of 1 Samuel, but even if you have not, you've heard many, many stories from 1 Samuel. We are going to see David and Goliath. We're going to see Saul trying to kill David. We're going to see all sorts of things that you probably have heard before, even if you haven't studied the book. We're going to come to some stories where you will go, wait a minute, I've heard that before. I know what happens here. I know what goes on. And that is because the stories in 1 Samuel are very well known. Some of our favorite stories come out of this book and out of this time concerning Samuel and Saul and David and others that we will come into contact with as we go through this book. So that's a quick breakdown. But for us, we've got three main divisions today in 1 Samuel chapter 1. We will see the birth of Samuel. Now, normally at this point, those of you that come regularly, you will know that at this point I would normally put up our main divisions for the whole chapter. I actually am not doing that today. We do have main divisions, 3 of them. And then each of those main divisions has a subpoint underneath it that look a lot like this. I'll go ahead. I'm going out on a limb here, putting out my subpoint. Okay? But it's going to look like that as we go through. But the main division is barrenness, verses 1 to 7. And then in verses 6, 7, we will see brokenness there in those verses. But barrenness, what is that? Barrenness, that's the idea of something not producing any life. When we think about the desert, we might say it's a barren desert or a barren wasteland. If you like post-apocalyptic genre, whether it be books or movies or whatever, you might watch a movie and you'll see a barren wasteland before you. It's just a patch of dirt and there's nothing out there whatsoever. That would be considered barrenness. What does that have to do with our study? Let's find out, beginning in verse 1 of 1 Samuel chapter 1. Now, there was a certain man of Ramathaim, Zophim, okay, that's the whole name, Ramathaim, Zophim, of the mountains of Ephraim, okay. Now, we're not going to go back into all the history, but just so you know, that's where the Ephraimites or the family of Ephraim settled, was up in the mountains. And that's where this man is from, and we're told his name here. And his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, and Ephraimite. I have no idea if that's how you pronounce those names, but if I say it with authority, you guys believe me. Verse 2 says that he had two wives. Two wives. Two wives. The name of one was Hannah, and the name of the other Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Now, you may find it, we'll stop there for just a moment, you may find it strange that this man Elkanah had two wives. It actually is not strange at all concerning the time and the society that they were living in. Multiple wives was very much socially acceptable. Neither of these women would have been forced into the marriage. They both would have married, and we're not told, which one came first, but they both would have married knowingly and knowing that, hey, there's this other spouse involved. It was very normal for the society at that time. However, you and I need to keep in mind that that was not God's original design or plan. That's not the original way that he set it up. We can go back to Genesis 2 to see his original plan. He made one man, one woman, Adam and Eve, and they got married and they became one. So the two became one. Later on, Jesus even would explain to people that, listen, in the beginning, he made them male and female. And so there's just one. That was God's original intention and plan. Why is God even involved in this sinful relationship, if in fact it's a sinful relationship? Well, you and I need to keep in mind that God is sovereign, meaning he's all-powerful. And he can decide which situation he wants to work in and through. And there are times, many, many times, oftentimes when he works through godly individuals. And he will do that in this chapter. But there are often times when he works through sinful individuals. And we may not like that. We may go, you know what, that's not right. No, that person's a sinner and God shouldn't be using them. Well, that's God's prerogative. He's welcome to use whoever it is that he wants to use. And here he's going to use one of these people. So we know that there is Elkanah, and we know that he has two wives. One is Hannah, one is Peninnah. We know that Peninnah had children. Hannah had no children. Now, this man, it says in verse 3, went up from his city yearly to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. So we know that this man has a commitment to God. And again, we may find that strange. How is he committed to God, but he has two wives? Well, it's this area of his life where he's got these two wives where he may not be right in that area, but still he has a commitment to the Lord. Now, is that okay with God? Well, no. Again, God planned for one man, one woman. He didn't plan for two men and a woman, or a woman, or two women and one man, or whatever. He didn't plan for any of those combos. It was one man, one woman is what he had originally planned for. But here, let's see what happens. This man Elkanah would go over to Shiloh. That's where the tabernacle was at that time. In other words, that's the place where people would go and sacrifice and worship the Lord. Okay? Now, we're told in verse 3, I didn't read the second half, but it says also, we're introduced to three more people here. Also the two sons of Eli. So Eli was there. We'll find out who he is a little bit later. Hophni and Phinehas. That looks like Phineas. And that's fine if you want to pronounce it Phineas. That's okay. But it's actually pronounced Phinehas. So you have Eli, you have Hophni, you have Phinehas. And it tells us that they were the priests of the Lord. And really Eli is the one that's the priest. His sons are also, they're serving alongside of their dad. So Eli is the dad. The sons are Hophni and Phinehas. Now it says in verse 4, whenever the time came for Elkanah to make an offering, okay, whenever he would go up yearly to Shiloh to sacrifice, he would give portions to Peninnah, his wife, and to all her sons and daughters. So pay attention, follow along. You have Elkanah. He's married to a woman named Peninnah. They have children together. She's got, we're told there in verse 4, sons and daughters, though at this point we are not told how many sons and daughters, only sons and daughters, plural. right? He would give portions to her and them so that they could go and make sacrifices on their own also. So everybody is going and worshiping and sacrificing. But look at this in verse 4. And whenever the time came, verse 5, but to Hannah, he would give a double portion. Okay, he would give a double portion, for he loved Hannah, although the Lord had closed her womb. Now, a double portion means just that. Whatever he was giving to them to sacrifice, he would give her double. And it says because he loved her. Now, that does not necessarily mean that he did not love Peninnah. What it is indicating for us is that he cares about Hannah. He's concerned for her. We'll find out why as the story continues. And he does love her and perhaps even has a special love for her. Gives her double portion. And then it tells us why in verse 5. There's some sympathy there. It says although the Lord had closed her womb. Now, what does that mean? Let's camp out here for just a moment before we go anywhere else or any further. What does it mean that the Lord had closed her womb? Well, we'll start backward a little bit. Closed her womb. What does that mean? Well, that's where the barrenness comes in. She's barren, meaning she is not able to have children. Her body is not able to either hold or produce children. Now, why is that? Is there something wrong with her body? What is it about her body? Well, we're not told what exactly it is about her body. In fact, it might be that there's nothing wrong with her body. But what we do know for sure is this, that the reason she cannot have children, at the end of verse 5, and I told you we would work backwards, so we know what it means to have, closed her womb. But here's who closed her womb. The Lord had closed her womb. The Lord was not allowing her to have children. Now, this is a strange point for some Christians, and here's why. Because many Christians believe that God is supposed to bless us, and in fact, He is. I would agree with that statement. But what do we mean by bless? What do we mean by that? Do we mean, and here's what we most often mean, well, I thought the Lord was supposed to bless Christians. Meaning, I thought the Lord was supposed to make our lives easy. That is absolutely not what that means. It may mean that He'll make your life more pleasant or easier or more money or nicer house or whatever the different things that we think about. But that is not necessarily how God blesses people. I would make the argument that He has blessed Hannah by not allowing her to have children. The only reason I would say that is not because I have anything against children. Children are wonderful, or at least they can be. Children are wonderful. They're a blessing from the Lord. We know that, right? But here's what's happening. I'll give a little bit of the story away here, give you a little bit of insight. God is not allowing her to have children for a certain time. He's going to bless her so that she has children. He's stopping her from having children for a short time. The Lord had closed her womb. Now, we're told there plainly the Lord had closed her womb. You and I need to understand that when God blesses us, that does not mean that we are not going to experience any hardships. The fact is that hardships, challenges in life, difficulties can produce fruit in our lives. Hannah was fruitless. She was not able to produce. The fact is that hardships oftentimes can produce fruit in our lives in various ways. We're days into the new year. Some of you made New Year's resolutions, which, by the way, I happen to think is a fantastic idea. I think that the date on the calendar changing from 2025, to the new year, I think that's great to use that as a marker and to say, you know what, I'm going to start over here, man. Let's just go back and let's just run it back and let's restart here and we'll make this new commitment. Well, a New Year's resolution, and many of you are familiar with this, and I don't know what your New Year's resolutions are. However, I would be willing to bet that somebody in this room, at least one person, has made a New Year's resolution concerning their health. And usually when you're young, you want to, well, I shouldn't say just young and old, any age. When we make health resolutions, generally it's, I want to lose weight or I want to gain weight. I was talking to a young man. He's not in here right now, though I won't tell you his name because I don't want you to go chase him down after. Everybody knows him. But he was telling me, he's like, no, I need to put on some weight. And I understand what he's saying. He's a thin guy and he wants to bulk up a little bit. I get that. Now I don't fully understand that. There's never been a time in my life where I thought, I need to bulk up. I've always been bulky enough. Okay? And when I say bulky, I don't mean like muscular bulky. I mean just, I think my pants shrunk, that kind of bulky, like, I think I'm putting on weight. But the other thing is we either want to lose weight or we want to bulk up. Bulking season, we hear about that all the time. Well, in order to slim down or to bulk up, what does that require? It requires some medication that you get from a TV commercial, right? No, that's not what it requires. That doesn't do it. What it requires is time in the gym, or maybe not the gym. Maybe it's getting out, getting your tennis shoes on and going for a run, if you want to slim down. Maybe it's doing push-ups, body weight. You don't necessarily have to go to the gym, but maybe you got your gym membership and maybe you go to the gym. Here's the thing, whether you're slimming down or whether you're bulking up, how do you do that? You do that through difficulties, through hardship. If you're trying to bulk up and you're trying to hit the weights and you go and you lay down on that bench to bench press and you lift that up and you go, you know what, this is actually, I feel pretty good with this. It's like a little bit lighter. What does that mean? It means that you need to do what? You need to throw another plate on there. In other words, you need to make it a little bit harder. If you're trying to slim down and maybe you're going for a run or getting on the treadmill or whatever, what do you need to do? You can't just go for a leisurely walk. What do you have to do? You got to speed that thing up a little bit. You got to walk fast. You got to start running. You've got to push yourself in order for there to be some results. Correct? Correct. It's no different spiritually. Oftentimes, God will use difficulties, challenges, hardships, hard times in our lives to produce fruit in us. Do you want to see spiritual growth in your life in 2026? Maybe your resolution was, you know what, Lord, I want to get closer to you. I want to know your word better. Well, listen, the way that that's going to happen oftentimes is through difficulties. Maybe you say, you know what, Lord, I really want to learn more about you through your word. Well, there will be challenges that will come that will vie for your attention to take you away from reading the word. And you're going to have to make those hard decisions. There's the difficulty. You're going to have to tell your friend, you know what, I can't game right now. I can game in a half an hour because I'm going to read for a little while. Oh, come on, man, I'm doing it right now, No, you got to make the hard decision. It's oftentimes through those challenges and difficulties that we then see growth or fruit in our lives. And so you may be experiencing hardships or difficulties. They may be coming in many different forms. What is our knee-jerk reaction? Knee-jerk reaction means, what's the first thing I do? Why, Lord? It's a question. Why, Lord? And the first thing I try to do is scramble out of it. If there's a difficulty, my first prayer is, oh God, please get me out of this. We may be cheating ourselves. It may be that God has brought about that difficulty on purpose in order to bring some growth in your life. And by you running away from it, you may be cheating yourself out of what God wants to develop in you. And so what our first prayer should be is not, God, get me out of this, but God, accomplish your purpose. I don't know what you're doing. And it's okay to say, God, I don't know what you're doing, and I don't like what you're doing. I don't know what it is, but Lord, you do whatever you want to do. You accomplish your purpose. You produce in me whatever it is that you want to produce through this difficulty. Help me to learn the lessons. Those are the types of prayers that we want to pray, because it may be that that hardship that you're experiencing is from God. And you don't want to shortchange that. You don't want to miss out. You want to experience all of what God has for you. Now, this brings us to verses 6 and 7, which I already have on the screen for you. So, inside of this barrenness, her being barren, not able to produce, we then have brokenness because of that. Look at verse 6. And her rival. Who is Hannah's rival? Anybody want to take a wild guess?
I don't know.
Anybody? Who is Hannah's rival? Who do you think?
Is it the second wife?
It is Peninnah. Yes, Peninnah, not Elkanah. Peninnah. Peninnah. It tells us here, and her rival also provoked her severely to make her miserable, because the Lord had closed her womb. So it was year by year when she went up to the house of the Lord that she provoked her. Therefore she wept and did not eat. Brokenness. Brokenness. That brokenness. Now let me explain something to you. We were introduced to Elkanah, and the first thing we find out about him is, well, we find out which family he comes from. Second thing that we find out is he's got 2 wives. And some of us went, I don't know, that doesn't sound right. And you would be correct. It's not right. God intended 1 man, 1 woman. And though God didn't directly punish him for having 2 wives, or say, you know what, that's it, I'm cursing you, or, I'm going to kill you. He didn't do any of that. What he did is what God often does, is he allowed those choices to run their course, to have their effect. You go, what do you mean? Well, here's what I mean. Because he has 2 wives, now those wives are in competition with one another. You see, if he only had 1 wife, either Peninnah or Hannah, there would be no competition. Peninnah wouldn't be chastising Hannah. But because there are 2 wives, now they're vying for that number 1 top spot. And that is a result of getting 2 wives. He should have just stuck with 1. Now listen, I don't know your families all that well. Some of your families I know, but not that well. I don't know what goes on at your house. Because I am a human being, and you're a human being, and we're all human beings, I know that your parents are human beings. And that tells me a great many things, but one of the things it tells me is that from time to time, at least, maybe more often, maybe less, your parents argue. Because everybody argues at some point. And you might go, man, my parents argue all the time. I don't know that, and I really don't need to know all that. My point is this, is can you imagine, you've heard arguments between your parents before. Can you imagine? You got, for most of us, there's probably one dad, 1 mom there. Imagine if there was 2 dads and 1 mom, or 1 dad and 2 moms. If there's arguing now, imagine what that would be like with somebody else in the mix. Now, Elkanah chose 2 wives. And at first it seemed like, well, I don't know, God just seems like he's okay with it because he just mentioned it and we kept going. But what is happening here is a result of having 2 wives. Now those 2 wives are competing and going at it. And I can guarantee you, it doesn't tell us in the Bible, so this is conjecture on my part. So you can disregard that if you want. Sorry about that. This is conjecture on my part. But I'd be willing to bet that if Peninnah is chastising Hannah, and Hannah is weeping and she's upset and she won't eat, I'm guaranteeing you that it is having an effect on Elkanah. That Elkanah is hearing about it. Elkanah. Peninnah won't stop. Elkanah, Hannah can't have kids. You should kick her out. I guarantee you he's experiencing the drama. paying, at least a little bit, he's paying the price for having 2 wives. This is part of it. This is one of the negatives here. It does not work well. Now, we're told there in verses 6 and 7 that her rival provoked her severely to make her miserable. In verse 7, year by year, what that means is constantly. Every time they went to Shiloh to sacrifice to the Lord, Peninnah was provoking her, hounding her. And look what it says at the end of verse 7. Therefore, speaking of Hannah, she wept and did not eat. What do we call that today? We call that depression. She was sad and she stopped eating. Sad and she stopped eating. Lost her appetite because she was so what? Broken. So broken. But you know, that brokenness, again, oftentimes develops something good in us where we then begin to really cry out and depend on the Lord. Normally that brokenness comes after a time of trying to depend on myself, trying to fix it myself, or trying to just really hold in there, and then finally I can't anymore and I'm too weak and I'm sad and I give up. And you know, that's not always a bad place to be. That's not always a bad place to be. As long as at that point I'm turning to the Lord and saying, okay, God, I'm done. Now I need you to step in, God. I need you to do something. So this brings us to verse 8, and that would be our second main division. You'll notice barrenness and then bitterness. Both start with B. Why is that? Because alliterations are so very godly. Okay? You can put that down in your notes. Barrenness and then bitterness. Bitterness beginning in verse 8. Let's read it. Then Elkanah, her husband. This is comical to me here in verse 8. Then Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? And why is your heart grieved? And look what he says. Am I not better to you than 10 sons? Nothing wrong with his ego, huh? Shh, you don't need a son. I'm way better than 10 sons. Poor guy. Obviously, Elkanah, I got something to share with you, man. You're actually not better than 10 sons. Because if you were, your wife wouldn't be so upset that she doesn't have a son, because she would just be completely, just immersed in you, and she'd be so happy that she had you. Now, no doubt, she seems to be glad to be married to Elkanah. At least we do not read that she dislikes him. But her heart wants a child. Her heart wants a child. Why is that? There seems to be this innate quality, this characteristic of women, ladies, females, generally speaking, not every time, but generally speaking, where the ladies have this inside of them, this desire to produce and to have children and to be a mom. You may not recognize that right now, young ladies, in your life right now. You may say, well, no, I don't want to have kids right now. You're not married, you're young, you're like, no, I don't want to have kids right now. But there may still be something in you where you just really, really love puppies or kittens or, whatever it might be. It could be a hamster, it could be whatever. And you might see that already where well, you know what? Actually, I really, really love this little puppy or this cat, and I just really love taking care of them. That desire is developing in you. And oftentimes what happens is as you young ladies get older, then you have that desire. You go, you know what? I really want to get married because I really want to have kids, because I really want to be a mom. I really want to take care of someone. Oftentimes the guys were a little bit later to the game. And we're kind of like, oh, why do we have to have kids? But then later on you go, you know what? No, kids are a blessing, man. But here she has this brokenness inside of her, this bitterness, because she doesn't have kids. It's hard for us to understand that. Society today, generally speaking, society is like, hey, man, don't have kids. Or don't have too many. If you have kids or you have too many kids, then you can't go. Okay, you're not going to be able to go on that vacation to Italy. I'm trying to tell you. You're not going to be able to buy that little sports car. You can't. Now you got to buy a mom van because now you're having kids. I tried to tell you could have been driving a sports car. Don't have kids, because then you can't just go down to the mall and go shopping at H&M anymore. Now you got to go shopping at Walmart. Don't do it. But you and I understand, as the people of God, that children are a blessing from the Lord. We understand that. Well, Hannah felt that same way. She knew that children are from the Lord. She saw that as a blessing or an approval from God. And so did the rest of her society, her neighbors, her family, everybody. And so for her to not have children, she would have felt like Elizabeth in the New Testament, John the Baptist's mom, who said, thank you for taking away my reproach, my embarrassment, my shame of not being able to have kids. That's how Hannah was feeling. She knew that children were a blessing. And so in verse 9, Hannah arose after Elkanah speaks to her and says, hey, listen, I'm better than 10 sons. Don't worry about it. It's funny sometimes the way the Bible is worded, because we have in verse 8, listen, am I not better to you than 10 sons? Verse 9, so Hannah got up. You see that? Like, oh, come on. I'm better than 10 sons. And I just picture her going, and she gets up and walks out like, nah. So Hannah arose after they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh. Now Eli the priest, there he is. Remember, he's got 2 sons. He was sitting on the seat by the doorpost of the tabernacle of the Lord. He's waiting to serve. So he's there waiting to serve and assist. And in verse 10 is where we get our title here for our second main division, bitterness, because it says that she had bitterness of soul, verse 10. And she was in bitterness of soul and prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. Now let me read that for you one more time, family. I need you to understand what is being said here and hopefully feel the impact of what is being said. And she was in bitterness of soul and prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. Now you might go, what are you talking about? I don't get it. Let me read it for you. If this was a story that was happening today, right now in our society, it might read something like this. And she was in bitterness of soul and went and got herself a gun and found Peninnah and killed her and kidnapped her kids and got revenge for all that Peninnah had done. I mean, that sounds like a Hollywood movie. Now, by contrast, that's not what godly people do, by the way. Here is what godly people do. And she was in bitterness of soul and prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. She was aching on the inside. You might say that she was depressed, because the previous verse tells us, back in verse 7, we're told that she wept and did not eat. She lost her appetite. Now we're told in verse 10 that she's got this bitterness of soul. You might say that she was depressed and she was in anguish. And what did she do in that moment? Did she go look for some drugs to take? She looked for some way to take revenge? No. What she did was she took that bitterness of soul, that anguish, whatever it was that she was feeling in her heart, she took that and she prayed. Very simply, let it be a lesson to every single one of us. Look, here's the truth. The truth is that some of us in here have already experienced what Hannah is experiencing by way of bitterness of soul. We go, man, I know what that's like. Maybe your parents divorced and you've already experienced bitterness of soul. Maybe you had a grandma or a grandparent or a friend that's passed away prematurely. They had cancer. They had some sort of sickness. And you go, you know what? I know what bitterness of soul is, man. You feel so strongly and there's nothing you can do about it. And what we most often do, and I say we, I just mean generally speaking, we get angry about it. People will put stickers on their car literally with the F word and then cancer, because I just want to let everybody know that I hate cancer because my grandma died from cancer or whatever it is. Or they get angry and they go start drinking, or they do some drugs, or they go out and they look for someone to beat up or whatever it is. Plethora of ways. But that's not what you and I do. We don't do that. What we do is we take our bitterness, we take our anguish, we take our the heart sickness that we have, and we pray to the Lord. Pray to the Lord. And that's exactly what she did. She prayed to the Lord and she wept in anguish. Did you know? This is reality, but we forget this. That when we go to God, it's not just, it doesn't have to just be when everything is right and, everything's flowery and, oh God, I just, want to thank you because everything in my life is perfect. And I scored the winning goal, or scored the winning 3-pointer, or I got an A on my test. Those are all wonderful things to thank the Lord for and to take to Him and say, yeah, you know what, God, thank you so much for this and blessing me this way. But you know what else you can do is you can take your anguish and your bitterness. You take all of that to the Lord, all of that ugliness, all of that nastiness, the heaviness of it all. You take it to the Lord. What did Jesus say? Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." He said, "Take my yoke upon you. It's easy. My burden is light." He said, "I'll help you. I'll revive you." We want to take everything that we have to the Lord. It's a wonderful example here that Hannah gives us. Now, what did she pray? Well, in verse 11, then she made a vow and said, "O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your maidservant," she says, I'm your maidservant. That means servant. "And remember me. And not forget your maidservant. But will give your maidservant a male child." I love that she's specific. She doesn't say, just give me a child. She says, give me a male child. Give me a son. "Then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life. And no razor shall come upon his head." What does that mean? What does that mean? It means that he's going to be committed. That was called the vow of the Nazarite. And what she's saying is, you give me a male child, God, you bless my womb with a son, I'm going to give him back to you. Now, I happen to think, and this is just my opinion, that Hannah really didn't need to pray all of that, because God already had a plan the process was already going. He already had a plan in place, and I think that he was already working that. Nevertheless, she prayed it. It's not a bad thing to pray, but she didn't know if God had a plan or not. She didn't understand that. So she's just crying out to the Lord, "You give me a son, Lord, he'll be yours." And in verse 11, and it happened as she continued praying before the Lord, that Eli, remember Eli, he's the priest, he watched her mouth. Now Hannah spoke in her heart, only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she was drunk. Your mom's going to ask you in a little bit, "Oh, what did Pastor Chris teach you in high school?" He taught in the sanctuary last week. What did he teach on? I don't know. There was some lady that she went to church drunk or something. I don't remember. Something like that. She was not drunk. She was praying the same way that you and I do sometimes. She was praying, probably eyes closed. She's praying from her heart, but within her heart. But she's mouthing the words, and it looks something like this. It's like, well, what should... Now, Eli evidently had not seen that before, because he looks at her and he thinks she's drunk. What is this drunk woman doing? And here's what he says to her in verse 14. So Eli said to her, "How long will you be drunk? Put your wine away from you." And I just imagine him saying, "Woman, put your wine away from you, woman. Why are you showing up to church drunk?" But Hannah answered and said in verse 15, "No, my Lord, I am a woman of sorrowful spirit." Remember, she wept and lost her appetite, bitterness of soul, anguish. Now we find out that she's got a sorrowful spirit, and yet she's taking all of that mess to the Lord. She says in verse 15, "No, my Lord, I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I drunk neither wine nor intoxicating drink, but I have poured out my soul before the Lord. Do not consider your maidservant a wicked woman, for out of the abundance of my complaint and grief I have spoken until now. Did you know that you can take your complaints to God? You can come and complain to me. That's okay. There's not much I can do about it. Unless maybe you're complaining about my hair or something. I guess I can brush it a different way or whatever. But those deep needs that you have, those spiritual needs, I can't do a thing. I can pray for you, but I can't fix it. You can take your complaints to God. She says, I was praying and I was complaining to God. I didn't think we were supposed to do that. Well, it's best that we ought not. We ought to go to God with thankfulness in our heart all of the time. But the fact is that if you have complaining in your heart, take that to God. Especially if you're thinking about coming and complaining to me. I don't want to hear it. Take it to God. He can fix it. He'll listen to it. Take your complaining and your grief to him. And in verse 17, then Eli answered and said, go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition which you have asked of him. May God answer your prayer. And in verse 18, she said, let your maidservant find favor in your sight. I'm your servant, Eli. So the woman went her way, and what did she do? She ate, and her face was no longer sad. Why? Because she had taken her sadness, her heaviness, her bitterness, her brokenness, her barrenness, her anguish. She had taken all of it to God. Cast your cares upon me, Jesus said. That's what she did. She cast all of her cares on God. Some valuable lessons. Now, this brings us to verse 19. I'm so sorry. I forgot to put that up there. Subpoint, underneath bitterness. That bitterness turned into prayer. Okay? Verses 10 and 11. But we move now to our third and final main division, which is blessed. Verse 19, then they rose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord and returned and came to their house at Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife. Now, don't get all weird on me and squirmy and all that kind of stuff. It means that when they got home, Elkanah and Hannah, as his wife, they had sex. That's what that means. That when it says that they knew, it means to know someone intimately, that way, romantically. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. That's a really neat way of saying God blessed her with getting pregnant. So it came to pass in verse 20, in the process of time, that Hannah conceived and bore a son. What did she ask for? She didn't ask just for a child. She asked for a male child, and God answered. So verse 20, it came to pass in the process of time that Hannah conceived and bore a son and called his name Samuel. What a coincidence. That's the same name as our study. Samuel. What does Samuel mean? Samuel means heard by God. And here's why. She gives an explanation saying, because I have asked for him from the Lord. She says, I asked the Lord and God heard me. What a great name. Samuel. Now in verse 21, the man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer to the Lord the yearly sacrifice and his vow. Remember that? So the following year, they keep going yearly. But Hannah did not go up. For she said to her husband, not until the child is weaned. So at least a couple years, believe it or not. They couldn't just go to Stater Brothers and buy, some formula and mix up, some drink and say, here, She had to breastfeed the entire time. And so she says, I'm not going to go with you until, look at this in verse 22. But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, not until the child is weaned, in other words, until he's done breastfeeding, then I will take him, pay attention, that he may appear before the Lord and remain there forever. Thank you, Squints. Forever. She has every intention of completing her vow. Remember her vow? You give me a male son, I'm going to give him back to you. So she's locked in. But she says, I can't go up yet. I can't leave him. He's still too young. Then in verse 23, so Elkanah, her husband, said to her, do what seems best to you. I love that. I love that. Do what seems best to you. I've never shared this with you before. I'll share something with you that I didn't share with the first service. So you're getting special info. I like you guys better. I pray for you young ladies whenever I see you. I mean all the time whenever I see you. While we're worshiping, while we're walking, while we're in here hanging out. I pray that God would provide you with a husband that will give you the freedom to serve him. I pray that for you all the time. Every time I see you, I'm praying for you that God will bring you a husband that will give you the freedom to serve him. Did you see what Elkanah did? Elkanah said, hey man, I'm not putting a trip on you, Hannah. You do whatever seems right in your heart. You made your commitment. Serve God. This is excellent. And so Elkanah said to her in verse 23, do what seems best to you. Wait until you have weaned him. Only let the Lord establish his word. Let God do what he wants to do. Then the woman stayed and nursed her son until she had weaned him. 2, maybe 3. And in verses 24 through 28, we have the last of our subpoints here. She surrendered him. Verse 24, now when she had weaned him, she took him up with her with 3 bulls. These are offerings. 3 bulls, 1 ephah of flour, and a skin of wine. And she brought him to the house of the Lord in Shiloh, and the child was young. Then they slaughtered a bull and brought the child to Eli. And she said, O my Lord, talking to Eli, as your soul lives, my Lord, I am the woman who stood by you here praying to the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition which I asked of him. Therefore I also have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he shall be lent to the Lord. So they worshiped the Lord there. She followed through on her commitment, the vow that she made. She showed up essentially for you and I in our modern day setting. She showed up to church with her brand new baby and said, here's my son, keep him. Now, please do not get any ideas. I do not want your kids. In a few years, when you start having kids, do not show up and try and drop them off with me. I have enough trouble trying to clean up after myself. Hannah kept to her commitment. You know, she had every reason to say, hey, I'm holding on to this one, man. This child is cute. Or, you know, God bless me with this son. This is special. I'm keeping him. But she didn't. She stuck to her commitment to the Lord. She stuck to her commitment that she made through prayer, and she held that child loosely and said, God, he's yours. We learn a valuable lesson from her. There are things that maybe in our lives that we've got a death grip on, and it might be a thing, an object, it might be a status that I have, it might be a person in my life that I go, no, I have to have this person. And you might have a death grip on that person. We need to be willing to release and let those things go if it's what's best and if it's what the Lord chooses. I did that with all 4 of my kids in the room, the delivery room. As each one of them came out, got cleaned up, the nurse came and brought them back to us there. As we're sitting, we quieted everybody down. I said, please, everybody be quiet. We're going to pray for a minute. And I prayed, and I right there in the hospital room said, Lord, this little child, thank you so much for this little child. I give this beautiful baby back to you, Lord. You want to take this baby's yours. I did that with all 3 of my girls and with my son. They're yours, Lord. Take them. Use them for your purpose. I haven't done that with everything in my life. I'm not standing up here trying to tell you, oh yeah, no, I've done this perfectly. There are things that I have held on to, death grip, that I need to let go of still. But all of us probably have those things. And we need to let go of some of those things. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for your word, and thank you for the lessons that we've learned through the life of Hannah.